Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. All right, Tyler Gould, how are you?
Fantastic, Mike Freeman. What a night, huh?
What a night. What a night. So we had a friend of yours on the program, right? Ashton Buswell was our guest tonight. What are you taking away from our time with Ashton?
You know, there's a lot of things that I loved about our conversation with Ashton. I mean, he's just one of these guys that draws people in. You know, he's just got this big personality and people are drawn to him. You know, I met him a dozen years ago, and I think he approached me and just I think I looked lost, you know, and he just he helped me out. But yeah, he's just one of those guys. He'll give you the shirt off his back, and he's kind of larger than life. But a couple things that I really loved tonight, Mike. He talked tonight about growing up and sort of his experience with his dad. And one of the things he talked about was the interviews that he would have with his dad. And he said that he continues that practice today. He likes to have formal and informal interviews. I really love that idea of like just having conversations with, you know, he talked about people that he loves, but also people at work where he's, you know, you can sit down and have a conversation that's deep, looking at each other across a table, but you can also have that same kind of deep connecting conversation over a game of ping pong.
Yeah. And I think that he makes that connection to his daughters today and how he's intentionally doing everything he can to dedicate time to make sure that the folks that he loves knows that he loves them and that he's interested in their life, and that, you know, he talks about love languages and, you know, trying to make sure that he's intentional. We talked about that battle against the distraction that is the cell phone, the addiction that is the cell phone, yeah. Right? And how he's trying to go about it. He doesn't claim to be perfect, which none of us are. We're all struggling. That's why we have this program, right? We're trying to be better. But he gave me some life hacks that I kind of walk away with putting in my pocket. Like, I'm going to try some of the things that he shared out that's helping him find some success in that battle.
Yeah. I loved his, you know, you could tell that he's very passionate about relationships. You know, when we ask him, what does it mean to live a rich life? He talks about relationships, you know, and the depth of those relationships. And I think that comes across very genuinely tonight with the way Ashton talks. And like I said, I've known Ashton for a long time, and he's a good man who is good to people. And that's reciprocated by a lot of people who love him dearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I some of my notes. He talks about the early influence of his parents. You know, there's some things in there that happen as a kid that still resonate in his life, and he's trying to be the best son that he can be. You know, and I admire that. We talk a lot about becoming, and we got another wrestler. And that discipline is there, right? These wrestlers, man, they do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, I should have wrestled, man. I don't know.
Who knew, right? Who knew? Right? But when they have a goal and they set their mind to it, man, get out of Ashton's way. I felt really like he's kind of a force of nature, pretty intense.
Yeah, and you know, right at the end of it, Mike, I guess we just have to ask ourselves, what are we going to take away and what are we going to apply tomorrow that Ashton brought up? And I loved the idea that when he talked about the cell phone and the old school alarm clocks and not working out with his phone and, and I mean,
and quiet in the car.
I mean, these are all things that I want to take and put into practice. I mean, there's some things that, he talks about intentionality. I think if I can be more intentional in those aspects of my life, I can certainly see my relationships benefiting for sure.
And the mental focus, right? Be where you are.
Absolutely.
When you're at work, all in.
Yeah.
When you're in the gym, all in. When you're at home, shut work off.
Yeah.
And it sounds really easy to do. And he acknowledges that this thing doesn't just instantly happen, but over time, it sounds like he's winning a lot of these battles that I personally need to hear. I needed to hear some of those things because I really think that Ashton gave me some strategies, some specific things that I can put into play that, like you said, will have a drastic positive impact on the relationships that I'm trying to grow in with people in my life. So
yeah. So at the end of it, there's nothing left but the work, right?
Got to do the work. And it's easy when you're a wrestler.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And, we've got I'm impressed with the excellence in Ashton's life.
Yeah.
Ashton, he's a winner.
Yeah.
Like he's demonstrated that drive, that passion, that commitment. He talks about, being at practice and having maybe a regional or a state or a championship under his belt, but he's always in fear that somebody out there is working harder than he is.
Yeah.
And so that lights a fire under him. When practice is over, his practice isn't over, and that separation leads to further success.
Yeah. I mean, look, it made me reevaluate me coming home and sitting down and watching a football game after work. You know what I mean? Like sure go out and do something, man.
Sure did. Well, we've got some homework. We've got some things. I actually think that this episode, you're going to see some specific challenges from us to our listeners. So we want to invite and encourage people to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. There are just some things that you're going to love about Ashton Buswell. And so, Tyler, I want to thank you for introducing me to Ashton. Appreciate any friend of yours is a friend of mine. And I really feel like we are surrounded by rich people.
Amen, brother.
So let's do something with it. Enjoy The Richest Man in Town with Ashton Buswell.
Mike Freeman.
What's happening, Tyler Gould? It's Thursday night. Here we go. Richest Man in Town. It's the place to be.
It is the place to be, man. I'm excited about tonight.
I look forward to these things in way more than I probably should.
You know what? I do too. I look forward to spending time catching up on some stuff with you, and I look forward to our guests, man. I'm psyched about tonight. And anyway, we'll get into that. But what's been going on in your world, man?
It's funny how these things kind of get braided together. By the way, listen to Katie Sellers. What a treat that was, the last episode. And last time we were getting together, we were talking about courage.
Yeah.
And I came across this quote. I don't know if you are a Simon Sinek fan, but Simon Sinek says this: to overcome our challenges, all that is required is the courage to ask for help. To ask for help is courage, right? And it's so where this is coming from.
Yeah.
Somewhat work related, but I attended a couple of hours of training for suicide prevention.
Yeah.
And the idea that people are going through life and we're bumping into them in places and they may be thinking about quitting really is weighing heavy on my heart. Always has. That topic always has. And the idea is, if we can use our voice, if we can use this platform to inspire and give whoever's listening to us the courage to ask for help. And then that got me thinking, it's kind of on us as dads, maybe we feel a pressure to know everything. And
I
as we
agree.
feel that pressure to know everything, that drives that desire to ask for help and show that we don't know into the ground.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I've had this, and I've told people this for a long time in my own interaction with people, is on a business level, right? I always tell people, like, there's a lot of power that comes when you can say, when you're having a conversation with someone and you can say in the middle of it, hey, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to do my best to find the answer to that. Right. And I'm going to come back and we can talk about what that answer is. And I'm a believer in that principle, that you have to be willing to, to kind of throw yourself out there and say, I don't know, because
and Mr. Cynic would even go further, right? He actually says, and I'm the more I'm listening to this, the more I'm agreeing with it. He says to offer help doesn't build trust. To ask for help builds trust. So think about that as a parent, right? I know you've had that conversation before where you've stepped in it with a kid and you've messed up and you've gone to them and say, help me with this.
Yeah.
Hold me accountable. I want to change.
Yeah.
That is more trust building with your child than any help you could provide.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Letting people in on that vulnerability, right?
And you're empowering them to be active participants in your life, right? You're not just saying, hey, sit back and let me read you the story. You're saying, let's get involved in this together, right?
Yeah, help me figure this out, right? Give me some feedback, whether it's at work, whether it's at home.
And there's a lot of pride, right? I think just people in general, right? We're proud, and sometimes you're in a situation. And you don't want to admit, one, that you don't know, or two, that you're wrong, right? Could be even more painful sometimes.
Well, I think where it gets to like asking for help is to really requires the courage to let people in on the fact that you need help because you've messed up.
Yeah.
One thing is like, I don't know. The other thing is like, I know better. And I didn't do what I needed to do. And now I'm in a spot and I need some help. That takes a lot of courage.
It takes a lot of courage. And you and I have had the opportunity to be in that situation on the other side, right? Where people have come to us and said, hey, I've stepped in it. I need help to get out of it.
Yeah. Spiritually.
And I think there's,
husband and wife in marriage.
Sure. I think there's, that to me is one of the most powerful moments and it's a sacred moment, right? When someone is willing to kind of open up and bare their soul and say, hey, reach in and help me get there. That's tough.
You know what isn't in the room at that moment? Ego.
Oh, yeah, it's gone, right?
Ego's gone. You're stripped down. And I saw this amazing painting the other day of underwater looking up, and the hand of Jesus is reaching into the water, and it's Peter.
Yeah. I've seen
and when
that.
Peter's immediately, when he's in trouble, immediately the Lord reaches down. That's such a valuable thing. Like, I want that on my wall immediately.
Here's the question, Mike. Like, when's the last time you did that? Like, you were the one asking for help in that situation. And because I was thinking about this the other day, oddly enough, you and I had this conversation a few years ago. We had a mutual friend that was going through some hard times in their relationship. And you called me and we were having this conversation about it. And we were both sort of taken aback by the news because we didn't see it coming. Right. And you said to me, Tyler, if I'm in that situation, I'm calling you and I'm going to ask for your help. Right. And I think I said to you, yeah, I'm absolutely going to do that. The same thing. But I was thinking about this the other night, like, would I, and that's sad. That's sad to even admit, because I trust you implicitly. I believe that you would give me the right advice, and I believe the importance of reaching out. But then there's that pride, that ego that sticks its head in. And I've told myself many times, I can figure this out, right? I got this. When I'm in a tough spot, I got this. And that's not the right approach. You know what I mean?
And I'm even thinking like, obviously, in that moment we're reflecting. And of course, in that moment, when we're not in crisis, we would say, oh yeah, bro, I'd totally give you a call and I'd ask for help. I can't even remember. And this is awful. This is going to be awful. But my life partner, my wife, when is the last time I've gone to her and said, can you help me with this thing? Right? Yeah. This thing that I'm struggling with, this thorn in my flesh, or this thorn in my side, what can you, who knows everything about me, help me? And it still requires courage.
For sure. And I've been in that same situation as you're saying that. I'm thinking, yeah, because my thought process 99% of the time is I need to shield everyone around me from what I might be going through because it could upset the apple cart, right?
Or it could be the very thing that tells everyone in your life that the gospel works.
Yeah. That's the reality of it. Right. And that's
that's really where, Simon Sinek goes on and says, admitting that I didn't know something and asking for help was perhaps the single best lesson I have ever learned. There's real power there. And we're not talking about the stereotypical dude who doesn't ask for directions.
Right.
That's not the kind of help we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's, I'm in it. I'm in this crisis of faith. I'm in this crisis of employment. I'm in this, midlife crisis, whatever we've got going on.
Yeah.
And how many guests have we had on here? And we've talked about, we're in a room full of guys. How long does it take to get real? And the answer is too long.
Too long. Well, okay. So hold this thought for a second. Cause I want to invite Ashton Buswell into the room. And I want him to get his take on this. So let's bring Ashton in.
Yeah, let's bring him in.
And let's have that discussion a little bit. He might have 2 cents he can add to this. Ashton, what's going on, man?
Hey guys.
Ashton Buswell, welcome to the richest man in town. How are you, brother?
Good. Excited to be here.
Good. You know what? Man. Tyler told me that you have at least 2 cents to add to our conversation here. So
yeah,
it's not a whole nickel. And I know that this is an unfair advantage because we've been kind of rolling a little bit and you're just joining us, but we are so happy to have you on the program. Happy to learn about those things that life and your journey has taught you. But first, I want to ask you a question. All right.
Okay.
We've been talking about Simon Sinek. I don't know if you are aware of Simon Sinek and his work. He has a quote that says, to overcome our challenges, all that is required is the courage to ask for help. And so putting you right smack dab on the spot, are you a person that has experience asking others for help?
100%. So I'm the anti stereotypical guy. I don't know if that's what you call it, where they don't ask for help. Oh, I'll figure out the directions. My theory is somebody else knows the way. I should just ask. So I ask all the time. My wife, sometimes it bothers her. Like if I'm, in the mall or something and I can't find a place and we walked not very far, she'll be like, why don't we just walk a little bit further? It's probably just around the way. I'm like, well, somebody else probably knows. They look like they know. Somebody else.
So is that, by the way, that always happens to me in Target. I happen to be wearing red that day. And I always get asked, hey, do you know where such and such is? I'm like, sorry, can't help you. What about weightier matters, Ashton? What about life help?
Wait. And let me give you an example here, Ashton. All right. A few years ago, Mike and I were having a conversation. We had a mutual friend that was having a tough time in a relationship, right? And we thought that relationship was going to come to an end. And Mike had called me and we were having a conversation on the phone, and we were both sort of caught off guard by this news. We didn't see it coming. And Mike said to me, you know what, Tyler, if I'm ever in the middle of that situation, I'm calling you because I want your help. And I said at the time, I was like, yeah, me too, man. If I'm ever there, I'm calling you. But the funny thing is, I was thinking about this the other night, and I was thinking, would I call him? Like, if I was in the middle of that, like, would I call him? Would I be too proud? And would I just say, I'm just going to suck it up and figure this out on my own? I mean, that's sort of my, right? I mean, anyway,
we have a default, right? We have a default. I think there are askers and there are non-askers, and we're just saying that there's some power. Simon is saying, and I'm agreeing, that there's some power when we ask for help, when we muster up the courage and say, hey, I don't know something, or even worse, requires more courage. I know better than I'm doing, and I need some help getting out of this situation.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
So as you think about your kind of default personality, Ashton, it would be awesome if asking for directions in the mall equated to asking for help in weightier matters in your life. And maybe that's how we practice, right? What are your thoughts on asking for help with some of the heavy stuff?
With heavy stuff. So I would say that the first step or the first couple times where you have to ask for help are the hardest. But my experience in life is when I've gone through and asked for help in weightier matters, that it becomes easier the second time because I've already done it once. The person that I thought was either going to be disappointed, which they were, or, just would have a bad perception of me or whatever.
Yeah.
They were just loving, the people that want. Usually when you ask for help, it's from someone that cares about you. It's not about somebody that thinks you're just a punk, right? You don't usually go and ask somebody that doesn't really care for you for advice. You're going to go ask somebody that you love and trust for advice or for help. And like I said, after doing it and then realizing that, oh man, all these people, this is how all of my family or friends are going to treat me if I have other weighty things to ask about. It's gonna be received with like a tremendous amount of love, so it's okay for me to do it. But the first time doing it is the hardest one.
Yeah. And you bring up bring up a great point. As you're even saying that, I'm thinking about the times where the shoe's been on the other foot and I have been asked for help. Yeah, and I obviously love the person that was asking me for help, and I knew something was wrong. Right. We're in that person's life enough to realize that things aren't quite right. And you've probed a little bit, but you're just waiting for them to ask for that help. And the second that they do, we're all in. We jump in and we do help out.
Yeah. Welcome them with open arms. So I've been on both sides like you. And every time, I'm a bishop at church and it's a neat experience because I've never felt judgmental of anybody when they've come in to talk to me about certain things. It's only and always been love. Yeah. And so I think, okay, if I'm the receiver on this end this time, but if I'm the giver or vice versa or whatever, that this is going to be received with love.
How does it feel to be the giver?
As far as the giver, which one would you define as the giver?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask the same thing.
When someone comes to you and asks for help, and you're able to step into that space and help,
give help.
Yeah, maybe we call that the helper.
There we go.
I love it. I love it. It's and again, being on the opposite side where the one needing help, it feels really awesome to just extend love in the purest way that I know how. Yeah. Because to have somebody that would think that, their world is going to fall down because somebody that cares for them is really, really disappointed, or they knew better and they knew that I knew that they knew better, and all those things that they might just think that I would throw the book.
We all know better, right?
We all know better. Yeah.
We all know better, but the challenge is not a lot of us do better.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and Simon Sinek concludes his thoughts on the subject when he says, when we help ourselves, we find moments of happiness. When we help others, we find lasting fulfillment. Amen. And I think that's just a cool thought, right? This is the richest men in town. This is really the life that we are about. I am curious, Ashton, when your good friend Tyler Gould reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I got a podcast. It's called Richest Men in Town. I need you to be a guest. You'd be perfect for it." What goes through your mind?
Well, I knew that he had this podcast, so
the whole world knows. The whole world knows.
We're huge, Ashton, right?
Yeah. The whole world knows about it. So when he called and said, "Hey, I'd love to have you on," I was honored. I was honored to be considered.
So Tyler, we go through our circles, right? We're students of life, and we're looking for who can teach us something. What made you think of Ashton?
Man, there's a lot of things that make me think of Ashton. I mean, I've mentioned to you, Mike. I mean, Ashton, I met Ashton, I think the very first Sunday I moved down to San Diego, and ran into him in the hall, and he guided me through the church building and introduced me to some people. And Ashton's just one of those guys that people are drawn to and excited to be around. And, you know, and I've had the pleasure of not only knowing Ashton for me personally, right, and being around, getting to know him as friends, but he's also been involved in my kids' lives through different church callings, and my kids hold Ashton in a high esteem, and you know, that's kind of that's sort of the measuring stick, right? Like if I figure Ashton's a good guy, but if all my kids echo that, then I think that I'm onto something. So so I'm stoked you're here, Ashton. Right?
Hey, I'm really excited. Can I ask how that makes you feel as you hear that?
Warm and fuzzy. Tell me more. I mean, stop it some more. It's really what I should say. Stop it some more.
Yeah, right. I was just reading off the sheet that Ashton emailed me earlier, so you know, it's all good.
Well, it takes a village, and when you have kids at our stage, so Ashton, you have younger kids, right?
Yeah, I've got a 7, 7, and 3-year-old, and almost a brand newborn.
Any day now.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
So if this show gets interrupted in the middle of it, we understand.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool because we got some circular, right? You're helping Tyler's kid. We're all part of that village. You're helping Tyler's kid, and right now your kids have someone in their life helping them.
Yeah.
Right. That's how it works.
It's very cool. You know, I've got kids that reference Ashton in my house, and sometimes I'm like, you know what, let's stop with the Ashton business, right? Let's just move on to something else, man. So, but hey, you know, Ashton, so really on the show, you know, we love to have the conversation about, you know, for Mike and I, and you and I have had these discussions too, Ashton, a little bit. You know, when Mike and I started to talk about doing this podcast and putting this together, it started out as a totally selfish thing, right? We were all about like, well, let's talk to people we know that can help us be better people. And that was sort of the end game, you know? And as we've gone through this, we've realized that, from the guests that we've had and from the feedback that we've received is that, you know, we're not the only ones in that boat looking for help, and looking for ways to be better. And one of the things I know about you is that you're dedicated to that idea of being better. And so can we go back a little bit and kind of start at the beginning, and you tell us about growing up and what Ashton was like, what your family was like, and where you are now.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Colorado. I'm number 4 of 8 kids. We didn't have a whole lot. We just had each other to beat up on. And I'm super grateful for that. There's 4 boys and 4 girls in my family. The first 5 of us, the oldest was 5 when the 5th was born. So it's just crammed in there about 14 to 18 months, 18 months apart, something like that. 17 months apart, somewhere in there. You do the math, but it's pretty close, right? And,
right.
And then it was boy, girl, boy, 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 girl, girl, girl. So for me, I was the boy, girl, boy, boy, and then the last boy, my little brother Blake. We were roommates. I've been roommates with him longer than I've been with my wife. I've been married with my wife 14 years. Still, Blake still holds that title. But we they would always be super soft and nice to Blake because he was little, or his body frame was more of a runner, and me and my middle brother were wrestlers and kind of more stout football players, and the oldest and youngest brothers are runners, and we were wrestlers. And anyway, so they would go easy on Blake and they would go hard on me. I was also a little more athletically talented than most, probably my age, and so they felt fine to beat up on me. My sister, she's a champion. She I might get emotional. She's so amazing. She would whoop up on all the boys. She would play soccer and just cream all the girls. So she went on a competitive boys team and creamed all the boys too. Wow. And I think it has something to do with being squished with all those competitive brothers that she had. But she played college volleyball, and then at a junior college, and then she transferred to a 4-year college, and she was like, I think I could play on the soccer team. So she walked on and started on the soccer team. She was incredible. That's amazing. But we a few things that shaped me as a kid were being from a big family, having competitive siblings, and then moving around a lot. So, or what I consider a lot. I was born in Colorado, went to kindergarten there, moved to Kansas. Feel like I was raised in Kansas from first grade to the start of 8th grade, and then moved to Montana for 2 years, and then moved to Utah when I was a sophomore in high school. And my parents have stayed there. So my youngest siblings, we call them the 3 little girls, they're from Utah, right? Because they moved there young enough to be raised there. But a lot of us claim Kansas. I kind of claim Kansas and Utah. But moving around a lot and going to lunch with no friends. And luckily
as a sophomore.
As
that's brutal.
Grader, yeah. Luckily for me, because we were so close, I always had a brother in school with me. So my older brother was just a grade older than me. And then my younger brother was 2 grades younger than me. So when we moved to Montana, my younger brother and I, we were in the same middle school. So I'm looking for him at lunch. Sucks for both of us. We don't have lunch at the same time. And then we moved to Montana. Now then we moved to Utah. Now I'm in the same grade or same school as my older brother, also looking for him at lunch. And so moving around a lot kind of helped me personally feel like I developed a lot of the looking out for the one, because I was the one multiple times. I was the one that didn't have any friends, that didn't know anybody, that kind of felt lost and lonely and unsure of who I'm going to be friends with, So, that was a big big part of my life. And then also,
but where does that come from? Because a lot of people would be like, get through it, man. I did. Right. Where does that compassion come from?
Yeah. And my parents probably that they trained us up to reach out. When we lived when we moved to Kansas, we brand new moved to Kansas, and my parents started inviting everybody over for dinner. Because they're like, we're new, just like we're new to them, just like they're new to us.
Yeah.
We might as well have them over for dinner, which is totally opposite. When you move somewhere, you're supposed to be the one that's like, oh, come over for dinner.
Don't even wait. Just be proactive, right?
They just jumped right in, and they would invite people over. And if somebody came, if somebody came to church and they were like thinking about moving there, instantly my parents would invite them over and try to help them feel like this is the best place in the world for them to be, and help us in church and with our kids and all those things. Right. So they were really proactive on that. And I remember my mom specifically saying that, this is who we are. We're new too, but let's have it be known, or let's just live our lives in such a way that we're trying to serve other people and reach out to them first. So I think that's some of where that came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
what was behind all the moves?
My dad just had different jobs.
Okay.
Yeah. He worked for commercial real estate is what he did. So he worked for grocery store chains, and then big malls. He was buying and selling shopping malls and different things.
So as you look back and you think about your your parental influence, what memories or what lessons kind of stick in your head when you think of your dad?
So I was thinking about this podcast here this evening, and there was something that in my dad's study. I just bought a house. We're going to redo a room and put a study, and I'm going to probably put the same sign in there. But my dad's in the study, it said, quote, said, "I am what I am today because of what my parents are every day." And I would see that all the time. And my dad, for him, it was a reminder of like, I need to be good for my parents. But it also like flipped for me. Like I realized, my parents have to be a certain way all day, every day. Right. For me to turn out how they want me to, and for my siblings to turn out how they want, they need to be on like every day. And so that was something that was really, really, really impactful. Something else I recently I've been studying a lot and thinking a lot about the word honor. Some of my friends go to a church that they have not a course, but they have like a marketplace course thing. And one of the things that they teach in there is to honor your leaders, or just honor.
Yeah.
And I've really respected it. I respected it like crazy, because every time anybody from their church gets up in front of our work, all of our work associates, they stop and they honor someone or honor something. And
love that.
I've been really impressed by it. And now they'll honor the least of us or the greatest of us. They'll honor technology. They'll honor just whatever it is. And that when we worship, I bring it back a lot to God. When we worship God, it's really, how do we honor him? We honor him in the way that we live, kind of like my parents are trying to live every day in a good way so that we can honor them.
That's a cool concept when you think about it, and really dedicating the time to do that honor. I was in a situation today where we were talking, and schools are kind of hard places right now, and kids are struggling. And the person that I was on the call with shared that in their county, they recently had 2 suicides.
Wow. And
it was a somber tone that just took over the breakout room via Zoom. And the person facilitating the discussion said, "Hey, can we just take 30 seconds and honor those 2 kids?" It's powerful. It was only 30 seconds, but it was the mindfulness of being like, you know what, that news that you just told me, that's pretty tragic. Can I just process that? And can I take a little time to be silent and honor that? I love that. I love that concept. And I think that one thing that you can probably agree with in 2020 is there's not a lot of honoring going on.
Yeah, it's tough to come by, right?
Tough to come by.
Yeah.
So Ashton, can you talk a little bit about your dad and your mom and sort of their influence on you and what their example was for you?
Yeah, totally. I consider them like 2 of the most Christ-like people that you'd ever meet. My dad is what I consider, he's the guy that should be on this podcast. My dad is the wealthiest person that I know. And it's not of gold and silver, but of love and relationships, and just people just love my dad. And it's because my dad loves them. He's all about making people feel important. And as a kid, there's 8 kids in my family. I bet you could ask all 8 of us who was dad's favorite, and we would all say, "Oh, it was me for sure. I was the favorite."
I love that, man. Yeah.
And I don't know.
How did he do that?
I don't know how he did that.
How did he do that?
I have no clue, but we all feel that way. Go ahead.
But you know what, Ashton, you said the other night, we had a pre-show call the other night, and you were talking about dating your daughters, right? And you said, hey, every Tuesday night, I go out with one of my daughters and we have a daddy-daughter date night. And I think was it you and Jane the other night in a tent?
Yeah,
or
yeah. Me and Jane.
Right? You and Jane in a tent in the front yard, right? And so I just, as you're talking about your dad saying, you're saying, well, everybody thought I was dad's favorite. I'm just thinking, as you're saying that about you dating your daughters and what they would say right now, because I have a feeling they would say I'm dad's favorite. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. There's a possibility.
We'll have them on the podcast. We'll ask.
We'll get it.
But I think that's a big deal. It's funny because years ago I was at a funeral for my dad's aunt, actually. But we always called her our aunt. Right. And, she was super fun. She would come into town when I was a kid, and she would just take the kids out individually, and she would take you out to dinner and dessert and just laugh. And it was just, good times. Well, years later, I was at her funeral, and I was, we were sitting listening to people talk about her. They had a group of people come up and just kind of share their memories. And someone said, I just remember thinking that, I was Aunt Marge's favorite. And I remember thinking like, what? Like I was her favorite, man, And what a powerful thing to have that much compassion and that much love to show that there's no one that feels like they're above the next person.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, man.
I think by the way, Aunt Marge has got to be the best aunt name ever.
I did totally. She sounds like, look, I know. It's great.
Like Hollywood cast, right?
Absolutely, dude. She was amazing.
I think it's genuine connection. Now today in our day and age where we've got these cell phones and a lot of opportunities for distraction. Yeah. It can be difficult to make sure that we have genuine connection. Something my dad did, and I'm trying to kind of formulate this with my kids. I've kind of started doing it with Jane already because we had a funny experience on one of our dates. But my dad, I wrestled in high school and college. That also shaped me. But my dad we'd wake up. Me and that other brother that were the middle brothers, we'd wake up at, I don't know, before any kids should wake up, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Load up our cooler, the swinger my parents got from their wedding forever ago, and put food in it. And we would drive to a little tiny town in Kansas and go to a wrestling meet. And me and my brother, we'd fall asleep on the way there. We'd weigh in, we'd do this stuff. But it was an opportunity for my dad to have an individual interview with either me or my brother or both of us. And he would start out the conversation like this. He'd say, Ashton or Tyler, do you want to talk about wrestling or do you want to talk about girls? Really, it was just like, what do you want to talk about? What thing in life do you want to talk about? But we would usually start with wrestling or girls, and either was fine. My dad didn't, obviously he wants to make sure that his younger sons are doing good things and not bad things with girls or whatever. Right. But it was, sometimes I'd just be like, wrestling. So do you remember this match? We'd talk about it and go through it. And then sometimes it'd be girls, right? And we'd talk about it, or we would just go on to other things. And that was genuine connection. It was a question that I knew that Dad was interested in me. And it was a question that was a consistent question. He asked me today, he'll pick me up from the airport when I visit Utah for work or something like that. We'll be driving and he'll say, Ashton, you're going to talk about wrestling or girls. And it opens up an opportunity for me to talk to him and him talk to me. And so two dates ago with Hallie, I asked her, like, let's talk about life. And we started talking about life. And she was telling me about her friends in school and things through Zoom. And then the next time I went on the date with Jane, I tried to do a similar experience. And I said, Jane, tell me about life. And she was like, stars. Because we were out on the trampoline. And I was like, no, tell me about life. Like, how's school going? And she was like, stars. No, tell me more. Moon. And I said, Jane, do you want to talk about life or do you want to talk about the galaxy? And she said, the galaxy. So I pulled out.
That's awesome, dude.
I pulled out an app on my phone that I have for the stars, and let's find Mars and let's find Neptune and whatever else. But we've since joked about that, and on my subsequent dates with Jane, now that's my question to her, and hopefully that becomes something like, do you want to talk about wrestling and girls, but I'll be able to talk about, Jane, do you want to talk about life or the galaxy?
Or the galaxy. That's awesome, man. And she's
No,
gonna.
but you know what?
Yeah.
I need that. Like I needed that, and Ashton, I appreciate that because I just recently had the opportunity to take. We flew my daughter from college out back home to surprise mom for her birthday, and then my son and I took my daughter back to the airport. 2-hour drive. We didn't talk about life in those 2 hours. We talked a lot of NFL, right? We talked a lot about those things, but I just think life is going to present you those opportunities, and you got to take them, and you got to capitalize on them. And I just learned something, so I appreciate that. I can be better.
I think too, maybe those conversations are, I don't know that there's, because I've been in that boat with you, Mike, and where I'm driving with Quinn and we got a distance to cover, and we're just talking about nothing, but we're talking, and I feel like there's some value there too. Like when your dad says, you want to talk about life, or do you want to talk about girls or wrestling? And you say wrestling, you break down a match for 30 minutes or whatever. I mean, there's value in that too. Totally. And it's interesting because here I am, however many years later, Quinn is in the MTC across the hall, right? He's in his bedroom in the MTC. But I come home from work, he comes down and he sits down, and now he's talking to me about, hey, in Second Nephi. And it's just like this whole different, but I think because the foundation is laid that you're willing to have conversations of any type.
Just talk, right?
Right. That we can
doesn't matter the topic.
Comfortable about it. Yeah. I think maybe there's value in there. So don't beat yourself up about talking about the Seahawks, even though, whatever. The Seahawks.
No, I think you're right, Tyler. I think I call them formal and informal interviews. So in work, I'll have a formal interview with people, and then I'll also schedule time to play ping pong with them. They think I'm just there to play ping pong. I'm there to have an informal interview with them to talk about different things. It's a different experience when you have a formal interview. Oh crap, man, what is he going to talk about? Or is this a performance review? What is this? And there's something to be said about that too, though, because people can prepare and they can have a harder conversation with you about things. But you can also do an informal interview, which is mostly just hanging out. But it's intentional. I believe in. I try really, really hard, and I'm not the best at it always, but I try really, really hard to be intentional about everything. Right? I've been intentional about my scripture study and my connections with my wife and meaningful conversations, and intentional. And so being intentional about scheduling informal interviews, be it work, be it church, be it with your kids, just a drive to Home Depot, throwing one of the kids in the car. It's not like hey, dad wants to talk. It's like, hey, do you want to go to the Home Depot with me? Sure. And taking that time when I could have been by myself.
Spending time together.
Right. It's an informal.
I like that
opportunity to talk.
I like that idea of formal versus informal, because then when the time comes where you need to have that, more formal, hey, we need to talk, there's already that line of communication is wide open, right?
And they already know through all of it that you care.
Yeah, right.
That you're interested. Because if you don't have the informal, the formal is going to feel really formal.
Yeah, super heavy.
Right? This is coming out of nowhere. Me and my dad never have this, and now we're having this weird, stuffy, contrived thing. So Ashton, can I just put a couple of thoughts together? You talked about being intentional, and you also talked about that distraction, right? And that battle against distraction. How are you winning that? Like, what specific things are you doing to win that distraction battle?
So not a long time ago, but I learned a principle, probably, I guess, 2005. It was turn your brain off and turn your brain on. A concept in my company, we call it play full out, is one of our leadership principles. But turning your brain off and turning your brain on, I think it's really, really important that when you need to be on work, that you turn your brain on work, and sometimes off of family. Like I work for my family. You're never really turning your brain off of your family, but but you're focused in on the task at hand at work, and you've got your brain onto that. And when it's time to be at the gym, it's not time to be on social media. It's time to be at the gym. So turn your brain on that and turn your brain off of social media, off of family, off of whatever. Focus in on what you're doing. And then when it's time to be home, you're turning your brain off of work, off of your exercising, and you're focused and laser focused in on home. Now, that's really difficult. My job is I'm a solar guy. I sell solar. I've had a 6:30 in the morning appointment, and I've had a 10:30 at night appointment. So I can sell solar to you at any time and everything in between.
You don't even need the sun to be out.
Don't even need the sun to be out to sell you solar. So my time, it can be adjusted, and it can be difficult to turn my brain off when I need to turn my brain off. When I'm at home, because I could be having a customer call me or text me. There could be something I need to work on or take care of. Anyway, the concept of turning your brain on and off, I leave my phone away from me. And at nighttime, when I go to bed, I plug my phone in downstairs away from where I'm going to be sleeping, so that when I'm going up to bed and getting ready for bed, I don't have the distraction at all, even close to me, so that I can just talk with my wife.
Okay, so that you are swimming way upstream with that concept, right? And I love it. I love it. Like, I need that. I'm hearing you. I'm taking notes. Appreciate that. That sounds really easy.
It took some. No, it's not. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
I read a bunch of studies that said it's not good for your brain to wake up and pick up your cell phone and start looking at social media
especially these days. Like, if that's the first thing into your head, that's not a great way to.
Not the best way to start. So I went and bought an old school alarm clock, and it's served us well because we look at the time all the time on it, but it's an old school alarm clock. So I wake up by an old alarm clock, and my phone's not there. So I try to get things done. Like in the morning, I want to have a meaningful connection with God, a meaningful connection in the scriptures and in prayer. And I do that before I pick up my phone. So it's not even there's not anything for me else to think about. I fill my mind with that before I go to the next thing. And again, the concept is easier said than done. I'll go down before my workout and check my phone, and it's a night I shouldn't do that, because then I get caught into the email and then the text of somebody that I'm starting to think about, and I should just walk outside into my little home gym and do my sit-ups and push-ups. And the days that I do that, I'm grateful, because the person that I could respond to at 6:45 in the morning may not want me to respond to them at 6:45 in the morning. And they would probably be fine with me responding to them at 8:00, just as much as 6:45 in the morning. So I again, the concept of the distraction is just the main distraction, I think, in our day and age is our cell phone. So just not taking it with me when I go to the gym. If I physically go to the gym, I leave my phone in the car, because if there's some sort of emergency, there's really not a ton of emergencies that really happen in our lives where we have to have like immediate contact all the time. And I've got 3 little kids, but there's really not a whole lot of things where we need that. I mean, my wife carries her phone when we go on dates. I try to keep my phone in my pocket or in the car, and we use her phone if they need to get a hold of us, knowing
that's a legitimate battle these days. And I really think it's valuable to have that discussion, how we can win that, because I think you're fighting chemistry. I think you're fighting some habit. You're fighting some, we get something from that, or we wouldn't do it.
Right.
And, there's research that says we pick it up 150 times and look at, like that to me is crazy. And I have an SE, like I've got a tiny little thing. And the idea is the smaller this is, maybe it'll have a smaller role in my life. Not working.
Yeah.
Not working.
Well, I love the idea too of as you're saying this, Ashton, I'm like, man, I gotta work. I got some work to do, man. Because honestly, in my house, it's like, look, kids, your phones are not in your rooms, right? The phones have to be at night, plugged in the hallway. We have a spot for them, right? They go there. And And that's a battle, right? I can't tell you how many times I've had to go in and say, that phone now is mine. Thank you very much. You don't get to use it there. And then I go in my room and I plug my phone in next to my bed. What that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then but the thing I really like that you said is on dates, a few nights ago or a few weeks ago, we were out and there was a couple at a table texting, right? They're both texting. I don't know if they were texting each other. Maybe that was romantic. I don't know, but they were texting somebody and not looking at each other. And I remember thinking like, that's ridiculous. But my phone was sitting on the table, like even then I think, leaving it in the car, like you said, what's the emergency, right? When I was a kid growing up, there was no phones, there was no cell phones, right? And my parents were gone. We all survived, sometimes barely, but we survived. Right.
Right.
So no, that's a great.
There really are a whole ton of things. And let me set the record straight. I'm addicted to my phone.
Right.
And I'm addicted to staying up late. I did a course at church where I was teaching a lesson and it was on addiction. And I was going through these different things and I was like, holy crap, dude, I'm addicted to staying up late. What a weird thing to be addicted to. That is kind of stupid. But I realized that was something I was addicted to, and I 100% am addicted to my phone. And like you said, Mike, it's swimming upstream. Like I'm trying to fight the battle to not pick it up as much and not look as much. And I put time limits on my social media that I can look at, but guess what? I can hit something that says, give me 15 more minutes.
Right.
I do that too. I set a time limit of 2 hours for all apps. Right. And then you just override it. It's that discipline, right? It's that self-discipline. Yeah. And I think that's the battle's with ourselves. We are the enemy, and we got to figure out how to win that battle. Can I ask you really quick, Ashton, how much sleep you getting?
I've been getting better, man. I've been my wife is disciplined. She's also somebody that should be on this podcast.
Yeah, I know that for sure. Absolutely.
She goes to bed early. She wakes up early, and I'm trying to be like her. And so I've been normally getting around like 7 hours.
Nice.
That's good, man. Mike and I had this discussion a while ago. Someone told us that, what was it? That if you have 5 hours, that you're probably going to die pretty soon. And we were both like, crap, we're 5 hours a night, dude.
I'm currently on 5.
I'm
addicted. I'm addicted to the late night like Ashton. I'm also addicted to that early morning hours when no one else is up, and I can get a lot, like you were saying, I can get a lot of study done. I can get a lot of pondering done. Something's got to give, or it's lights out.
Where I started getting more sleep, and my wife told me that this would work, and I was like, whatever, dude, I'm just going to be dead tired. She said, you got to wake up early. And I'm like, no, because if I go to bed at 12:30 and I wake up at 5:30, I'm going to be dead tired all day. And she's like, no, what will happen is your body will be like dead tired at the end of the night. And so you'll go to bed sooner if you wake up earlier. And she's right. Like I wake up at 5:30 now, but I go to bed earlier than I used to because.
Well, let me give you a little preview here. As your kids get older, they'll creep into your guys' time.
It's true.
And you will be compelled to stay up later if you want to have that time. And then eventually they'll surpass you and you'll tap out and you'll just go to bed.
That's the stage I'm in, dude. It's like
that's the stage I'm in.
Yeah. It's
all right. Hey, put the dog away.
Yeah. Turn off all the lights when you go to bed and lock the door. Yeah. So Ashton, you talked about your dad, and I love the idea of the interviews. Can you talk about your mom a little bit?
Yeah. So my mom, she is the most saintly person that I know, her and my wife. She, again, 8 kids. She's got a heart of gold. She has eight of her own kids, and she did daycare for like 20 something years.
Wow. And
she has all the toys in her basement. Everybody wants to go to Grandma Buzzwell's house because there's just toys for days. And we asked her as adult children later on, like, Mom, how the heck did you do that? And she said she would get through the day if she could hear a kid laugh. She just loved the pureness of a child's laugh. And that was pure, just hearing her say that. But all these kids, she just loved up on all these kids that she did daycare for. Again, all of us would think that my mom, that we're her favorite. I remember what she would do really well. So she was in the PTA She was soccer mom. I mean, sometimes, this is again pre-cell phones, we'd have 6 kids, 5 kids, 6 kids playing soccer on a Saturday.
Oh my gosh.
No cell phones. Sometimes at 3 or 4 different parks, and she'd say, "Okay, Ashton, your game gets done at this time. I'm going to meet you at this rock right here at this time, and you better be here because we need to get over to Emily's game after this." And so she, we would coordinate all this stuff.
That's like the Gould family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Soccer game to soccer game.
But what she would do that I loved was that my mom would pull us in to do stuff with her. So I would come home sometimes from a hard day at school, and she'd be busy around the house, and she'd say, "Hey, Ashton, come help me do the dishes. Come sweep this with me," or whatever. And we would just talk while we were doing stuff. And I was that necessity because there were so many of us and so much to do, maybe, but it was also just the way that we connected. We connected by actively doing things. And man, she was always just looking out for, her spirit was just so strong, and she was looking out for people. A story, there were some people that were in a really, really not so nice part of town in Topeka, Kansas, that none of the men in our congregation would go to pick up these kids because it was pretty dangerous. My mom was all about it. Let's go pick them up. Picked up Perkessa and what was her brother's name? But we picked him up every Sunday. And there's this white lady that shouldn't be in this part of town. Just no big deal. She knew who she was, and there was kids in there that needed to be shown love, and so she would go pick them up and take them to church with us. And I think it was Marcus, maybe not, but anyway. So the thing that my mom just did such an incredible job at was just showing me how to love everybody. And my dad did that. He was about relationships, and we are what we experience together. And the depth of our relationship really becomes the depth of what we've done together. That's what one of my dad's philosophies, and I agree with it. And my mom was just, I'm going to show you love. I'm going to love you so much it's going to hurt you. Okay, so you can't get away from it. I'm going to love you so much you can't get away from it.
Right. Yeah.
So here's what I'm curious. So many people want to. It's interesting that you refer to your parents as Christ-like and saintly. And so many of us want to be that way, right? We want to be like, we walk into church and we want to be like that older couple. And we don't necessarily understand that they didn't just become like that overnight.
Yeah.
That there was a process. Can you speak a little bit, just as a kid looking at how your parents lived their life? How did they become? Right? We're in the business of becoming. We're not there yet. How did they become these people?
Man, that's a hard question. I don't know. I mean, as a kid, again, that idea of being I am what I am today because of what my parents are every day. I think both of my parents came from good parents. They both had really good examples of how to live and how to love. And my dad's dad was a dentist, but he was also he had peach orchards and apple orchards and horses and sheep, and so he was.
I'm such a slacker, Tyler.
Making the kids work,
Exactly.
I'm such a slacker. I work in an office, and I go to the copier, and I sometimes I stack some paper.
And you're spent at the end of the day. Got nothing left, man. I've been making copies for 8 hours.
Don't talk to me. I've made too many decisions. I've got decision fatigue. I'm out.
Okay, well, wait a second. So
put the game on. I'm out.
The question, okay, looking at your parents and saying, how did they become the people that you saw? I guess maybe we could ask the question, how are you becoming or trying to become the people that you admired that your parents were?
That's a great question too, man. So the just trying to be like, what would Jesus do? What would my mom do in this situation? What would my dad do in this situation? How can I, and then earlier we talked about help. I've called my mom and dad on lots of things for help. So that relationship was established young where if I've got challenges in any aspect of my life, I go to the source, man, God, and then them. But I reach back to them to try to.
I just chuckle because I'm wondering what Abe Freeman or Grace Freeman would do if the criteria was, what would dad do in this situation? You know, like I really hope I would pass that test, and by doing what I would do, it would line him up with the Savior. But man, sometimes not so much.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. So the question, Tyler, I mean, the challenge, I went to a course, I've been to a few different courses that say that a lot of our development of a pivotal moment in your life happens when you're, between the age of 7 and 10. My daughter Hallie, she's at the latter end of that, and my daughter Jane is at the start of that. And I'm like, have I already screwed it up for them? What have I done or not done that was a pivotal moment? I'll tell you guys my pivotal moment that I learned when I was 33 or something. Like I went through this course and I was like, holy crap, dude, that was totally a pivotal moment for me. I don't remember exactly how old I was. I was probably 7 or 8, maybe 9. And I was in a bunk bed, and my bunk bed, I had a baseball trophy that was on the top, and I could reach down with a baseball trophy and I could turn off the light. Right. So it was my hack to have the light on and whatever else I was doing. And then I didn't have to get out of my lazy butt out of bed to climb down just to turn the light off. I would use the baseball trophy. Well, my baseball trophy disappeared. I don't know where it was at. I wasn't happy about it. And I thought my dad was up the hall. And I said, Dad, can you help me turn off the light? Hey, Dad, can you help me turn off the light? And he wasn't coming. And I just started yelling, Dad, can you help me? Dad, turn off the light. I was so mad because I swear he was down the hall. Well, my dad was downstairs working or doing something in the study. He came storming up the stairs, and he said, and he turned off the light, and he said, Ashton, I'm not always going to be here to turn off the light. You need to get out of bed and turn off your own light. Now, as a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, my dad's dying.
Oh man.
That's how I interpreted that as a kid. Now you and all three of us here with kids of our own, I interpret that now as like, my dad was just mad at me because I was waking everybody else up. He was in the middle of something else, and he was just like telling me, hey kid, get out of your bed, quit being so lazy.
3 feet away.
Yeah, it's 3 feet away. But as a kid, I cried myself to sleep because I thought, oh my gosh, my dad's dying.
Oh man.
So I started to live in a way where I wanted to always make my dad happy, because I didn't know how much longer he was going to be around. So anyway, that was 20 something years ago, 23 years ago. And I still want to live in a way where I don't ever disappoint my parents. But that was a pivotal moment for me. And Tyler, go back to the question of like, have I already screwed that up for Hallie? Sometimes I'm like, dude, I may have said something that was wrong. I don't know what I did. I hope I didn't make her feel like I didn't love her or whatever the case is. But I, after having that realization about my dad and trying to do the best that I can right now with my kids, and I've had some people in work do some things that aren't my favorite things. And I've had people at church, and, people will say stuff that's something you're like, dude, that at first glance, you're mad at them. But when you take a step back, I'm like, they're just doing their best, man. They're doing their best. And my kids, I'm just doing my best. They're going to have that pivotal moment, just like I had and thought my dad was dying. And we're all dying. Let's be honest. It's just, it wasn't the next day that I thought, or next month that I thought my dad was dying, And so I just think we got to do our best. And I love, you were right at the start when you said, Tyler, I really do love trying to get better. I've hired a personal coach to try to train me on different things in my life of how I can become better. And I think that's a mantra that we should all have if we can get better all the time. A lot of our sales with solar is door-to-door sales, and guys are going door-to-door. It's pretty difficult in the pandemic. Not as many are doing that right now, but door-to-door sales is a great teacher, because you can look at your life like, man, my life sucks. I'm getting told 40 times every day or 50 times every day. Or you can look at life as saying, I have 40 or 50 opportunities to get better every day. Right. And it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that if we're all just trying to get better every day, and we extend grace and mercy to people, you know, we're all going to screw up. And I hope that if I can extend grace and mercy to somebody else, that'll come back to me when I make mistakes, you know?
Absolutely. So, well, let's talk. So you mentioned grace and mercy, and I think it would be important at this point, because honestly, we're going to be limited in our quest for better without grace and mercy, right? Yeah. Without it being an endeavor of faith, there's going to be a ceiling. And with God's help, there is no ceiling. So I'm curious, Ashton, where faith comes in. Where does faith come into your life as a source of power? Where maybe before that moment, or before you went to church, or you did what was expected of you, but something happened and you had an event, or you had a moment where it became real that God is mindful of you, and faith became an important source of power.
Yeah. So faith for me, I mean, I was raised religious, and I'm grateful for it. One of the things that concerns me about our world is that religion isn't a favorite thing, and it's a more popular thing to not be religious, and that's worrisome to me. I don't care what religion you are. There's a lot of great principles that are taught in.
Absolutely.
And so anyway, so I'm grateful that I was raised in a way where it was Christ centered, and it was about faith. But some of that's difficult. You can live on borrowed light for a long time. Tyler was referencing Quinn, you know, now coming to him with things. And Quinn, I've loved Quinn since he was a little deacon. I worked with him as a little deacon, and I just loved the little dude. And now he's taller than me, you know. But but you know, the faith of Quinn as a deacon and the faith of Quinn as a new missionary is different. Because as a 12-year-old, it was like, you know, well, my dad says this, and my mom says this, and my grandpa says I should do this. My priesthood leader says I should do this, and you're doing things, I think, off of borrowed faith.
For sure.
I really did think that I received answers to prayers, and I did. But that kind of a pivotal moment for me, Mike, was as a missionary. I kind of had 2 or 3 opportunities where I felt like God, you know, one particular experience where I felt like God's finger was coming through the clouds, and it was like, bzzz, and like my whole body just felt engulfed in the spirit. And it was like nothing that I'd ever felt before. And I knew I didn't create it. There wasn't any way that I could create the feeling that I'd felt. And then one specifically where I received a blessing from my mission president. I had come to a mission meeting with 2 questions on my mind, and I don't remember them. It's in a journal somewhere, but I remember I had 2 questions on my mind, and I was praying that God would answer these questions through the training that we got, the missionary training that we got, and it didn't come. The answers didn't come. Actually, that's not true. I came in with one question, and at the start of the meeting, another question kind of came up, and I was anticipating that it would be answered throughout the whole thing, and neither of them were answered. After the meeting was over, I asked my mission president for a blessing, and he laid his hands on my head, and he gave me a blessing. And I hadn't talked to him about any of these concerns or questions that I had, but both of the questions that I had were directly answered. And they weren't like just something that you would normally hear in a blessing. It was a complete revelation from God directly to Ashton. And it was, holy cow, God knows me 100%. There's no way possible that this guy that I've only known for not very long would know exactly what I needed to hear, because I haven't talked to him. I haven't talked to the person that was with him. Nothing. I just said, I need a blessing. Can you give it to me? And both of those big questions were answered. And I was floored that God knew who I was. And I was at the bottom of the earth in New Zealand. I was lucky enough to go there. And God knew me down there just as much as he knew me anywhere else too. And from that point forward, I recognized that God wants to talk to me more, and that he's there more than I had before. And so I try really, really hard to listen. But that was pivotal for me. Never had I had an experience that was that direct You know, and I think some of it, sometimes we get a blessing from our parents. They already know kind of what's going on in our lives, right? Like they already know the ins and outs, or we've
Right.
talked to them. My dad says, you want to talk about wrestling or girls? And I spill all my guts to him, and then he gives me a blessing, but he already knows, you know? So to have somebody else, a third party, come in, it was a special experience.
Can I ask how you listen today? You know, it's interesting because we have conversations often about prayer, but very rarely in those conversations do we talk about listening, right? I think we're really good at like, okay, what does prayer life look like for you? How does that work into your worship? But how does Ashton listen?
It's a great question. So there's two influential talks that our church leaders have given us that have really shaped me recently. One is from President Nelson, his first talk that he gave as a prophet, Revelation for the church, Revelation for our lives. In there, I feel like he gives two pretty blatant recipes for revelation. One for personal, like just for like feeling the Spirit and how to act on it, and then one for like deeper mysteries of God revelation too. And it's they're kind of separated at the end of the talk, and that's been the most impactful talk of my life. And then there was another talk, and I don't remember who it was from. I should, if it was really impactful, huh? but the talk basically said that they do their best to listen the first time. Throughout my life, when I get an impression, God would have to like beat me up about it. Like, go do this. No, that's not really God. That must be me. No, go do this. I still don't think that's God. That's probably me. Go do this. You need to go do this for this person. And he would have to say it like multiple times before I would be like, all right. I guess 4 or 5 times. I guess this is probably real. Maybe I should do something about it, you know? But that talked about acting on the first time that you feel something. And when I talk about faith, when I tried to put that to the test, and whenever I felt an impression and I tried to move on it right away, guess what, man? It was right. Like that. And then what started to happen for me, and I'm not, and I hope this doesn't seem like a holier than thou, or I'm something special. I just plug my cell phone in at night downstairs. That's all I got. But
pretty good though, man. Really.
That is peculiar.
That is peculiar. But the idea of once I started to do that and try to, if it was something that I felt was good, maybe it was from me, maybe it was from God. But frankly, man, I think a lot of things, God's really trying to talk to us a lot more than we realize. And a lot of the things that come to us that are good are probably from him. And we chalk it up to like, oh, it's just me, or it's just some other advice that somebody's given to me. But the more that I've acted on those things, the faster that other revelation has come. And one of the things that I do try to do, Mike, is I know that Tyler's a punk rocker, and I'm trying to be like him in so many ways. But one of the things that I try to do is I try not to listen to a lot of music on my drives for work, and just try to have a little bit of peace and have a little bit of quiet, that my mind can ponder stuff. And I got my phone, and people are texting, and I'm calling, and I'm making all these different calls, but I listen to podcasts and I listen to other things, but I try to not, if I can, while I'm driving between places, to not listen to things, because that's an opportunity for me to connect with God. And it's a bit of the prayer in the heart. I mean, I pray in the morning and I pray at night, and I try to pause for a little bit and listen. But I also try to listen during the prayer. I think the Holy Ghost is trying to tell us what to say. It says that in Romans, that he's trying to tell us what to say anyway. But to listen as I'm praying, and you know, sometimes in the middle of my prayer, I'll stand up and I'll write something down, or I'll pause it because I feel like I'm receiving an answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go over to my wife's phone that plugs the phone in by the bed. I'll text myself, I'll text myself
Right,
for the next morning. But anyway, so it's kind of giving yourself opportunities to feel the Spirit or to listen. And
I think too, Ashton, like a big part of that too is understanding what that voice sounds like, right? I think that recognizing what that is. You know, a lot of times we have these discussions, or you're in a church class or you're in a gospel discussion. You say, well, we feel the Spirit, right? And we just kind of gloss over that. And we move right by it. I think understanding what that the definition of that is, right? And understanding how the Spirit speaks to you and how, you know, what those promptings feel like. Because I always think about D&C, Doctrine and Covenant section 6, right? Where it says, as often as you have asked, I have answered, right? It didn't say every once in a while when you ask me, I give you an answer. It's every time you ask, you get an answer. And so then the question, when I read that, I'm always thinking like, all right, what do I have to do to dial it in, right? To hear it every time. And I think that it's different for everybody. And I think the process is different. That's why I think this conversation, the things that you bring up is so valuable, because it's important. I think that people understand that, hey, you can get that answer driving in the car to work, right? Because honestly, that's the time when I probably pray the most intently, because I've got that time all to myself.
Well, and because
right?
the world is so noisy by design.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
I think, Ashton, you're exactly right. I think God is trying to talk to us. There's an adversary who's trying to run interference, and that could be good things in our ear, right? But it's blocking things, and we're just not quiet enough, and we're not still enough. And I think driving with the radio off is swimming upstream, right? It's a peculiar thing, but you're giving God space. You know, like I would always, talking to kids at church, it was always about, hey, giving space is like, just give him 5 minutes, and you'll be amazed at what those 5 minutes can do. And I think as parents, that's one of the most important, vital things we can teach. Identifying the Holy Ghost and saying, y'all feel that? Talk to me about what you're feeling right now. Because that's a member of the Godhead confirming that what we're talking about right now is part of that holy truth. And that's the greatest gift. I could go tomorrow if my kids know that. I don't have to worry, because by the power of the Holy Ghost, they can know the truthfulness of all things. I won't always be there to turn the light off. Right. But they don't necessarily need me if they know how to get answers from Heavenly Father, who knows a lot more than Mike Freeman does, right? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, and I think you know, it's when you talk about the distractions, man. There's so much, and it hurts my heart when I go on a college campus. I've got some people part of my congregation that I've gone on to SDSU, and everybody's got earpods in, and everybody's got something plugged up, and they're not connecting on a human basis, and they're just not allowing for space of time to not be bombarded with something, right? I had a friend, my wife we were with some of our friends, and you know, if you guys work out with music if you run with earpods, this isn't a slam on you at all. I work out in my gym with some music on and stuff, but when I run, my wife runs, we don't have earpods in. That's just our personal preference, right? And it was like, dude, how do you do that? Don't you get bored? And my wife's like, I'm not looking at paint dry. I'm out in nature. I'm like, I'm checking out cars, make sure they're not hitting me. I'm looking at I got trees, I got mountains, I got sky, this is beautiful. This isn't like, this is something. Sure, it could get boring, I guess, if you're just staring at the road.
But I think that's a mark of life in 2020, is no one experiences bored.
Yeah. But, and isn't that like a few months ago, right? We got in the car to go somewhere as the family. We're getting ready to go, and we load up. We're driving out of my neighborhood, and my youngest daughter says, "Can I see your phone? I'm bored." I mean, we were in the car for like 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like there's this need to be constantly entertained or distracted. I think sometimes we want to be distracted because the alternative is we have to listen to our thoughts. We have to self-reflect.
Think about that.
We have to be
real life.
Yeah, we got to be honest with ourselves about where we are and what we need, what we really need to be doing, right?
Think about that, because the self does know.
Sure.
The brain, right? You're gonna have those open loops, like, hey, that thing, hey, you need to change that thing, that you need to stop doing that thing. And if we're not in a place, sometimes self is the worst company. You don't want to be with yourself. You don't want to be alone in your thoughts, because you know what those thoughts are going to be, and it's all going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be asking you to change things. And it's like, you know what? Let me just put in some 90s hip hop and I'll be fine. No knock on 90s hip hop. We're doing a 10-mile run challenge every week, and that's actually getting me through it a lot of times. So the idea of doing that, and I've just got to hear my 200 plus pound frame pounding the pavement for 3 miles. That's not a pretty sound, Ashton.
Ashton, how do you honor your parents today?
I honor them by trying to be the best person I can, man. They are great citizens in the United States of America, and I try to do the same. Thing. I live how they would want me to live. That's how I honor them, and I also tell them. I try to tell them how much I love them, and tell them how important they are to me. And one thing that my dad does really extremely well is he will always praise his wife in front of anyone and everyone, but especially his kids. Our family group me message is say, take a picture, and it's always with his lovely wife and with this beautiful bride and this, and he's always building her up. And my mom does it back to him sometimes, but it's mostly him. It's mostly him that he's
we gotta get your dad on the show.
I know. You do.
We gotta get you. So walk me through. I gotta know about the wrestling thing. You're our second wrestler. What did wrestling give you?
A lot. It shaped me a lot. Discipline. It gave me discipline. It helped me to formulate and solidify hard work ethic, or my work ethic. It helped me build in my like the competitive spirit. I'm a competitive dude. But it helped me fulfill a lot of that. Yeah, those are the main things. I mean, discipline. If you're wrestling and you need to be a certain weight, the interesting thing about wrestling to me is that the people that I would wrestle, especially in college, we would weigh in within 0.1 of a pound of each other. So different than football or basketball or baseball, where size, you're taller. I'm 5'7" 3/4. I was the MVP from the state of Utah for one of the things my senior year, and got one letter from a small school to play football. If I would have been 6'2", 230, I may have got more, but with wrestling, you literally are the same weight. Now your body frames might be a little bit different, but usually you're both pretty ripped. You're both pretty lean, not a lot of fat, and you weigh within a half a pound at the most of each other. And so the people that would win the wrestling matches wasn't because you were bigger than somebody else. It was because you had a stronger mental mindset than they did, and your technique was better. Sometimes if your technique wasn't better, but you mentally believed you could, you worked your guts out for it, and you prepared, your discipline of your preparedness could outweigh somebody else's talent because they were gassed in the third period and you weren't. And or some people could be more in shape than you and have more discipline in that way, but your technique, you'd worked on your craft over and over and over again so much that you could still beat them because your technique was better. So
you're not in high school. You're not in high school anymore. How does that apply to life now?
My sport now is my job. Wrestling has become my solar cells job has become like my wrestling mat, where it's really helped me, the discipline and the work ethic and being focused with wrestling is that. So after wrestling practices, I was a national champion my freshman year at junior college and in sixth grade. So I was a national champion twice. But
whoa! So like national meaning best in the country of the United States of America.
Yep. I attribute
All right.
I attribute my my one.
How big was that trophy? You could probably turn the light off with that trophy.
No, it was just this little baby medal, but it's worth a lot to me. It's worth a lot to me. But and now you got me off track. What was I going to say? The applying it to life, the work ethic. Oh, so I was good. I was a good wrestler. I said that so that I could share with you that I was a good wrestler. But I still believed, like, my mental mindset was somebody else is out there is better than me. And somebody else out there is going to be in more shape than me. I can't let that happen. So after practice in both high school and college, the coaches, they just beat you up, man. And if you ever went by a stinky wrestling room, it's so stinky. There's so much sweat in there. You're on ice skates on the sweat at the end of practice. It's just gross, right?
Sweat and MRSA.
Yeah, and ringworm. So at the end of that, I would still go do extra because that was who I wanted to be. I wanted to do more than somebody else in the country because I was the best in my state, and I knew I was, but I knew there was somebody else out there that was a little bit better than me. So I would do stairs, I would do a distance run, and then I would do sprints every day after practice. Everybody else would go to the locker room and change to go in their street clothes. I would change into my running shoes, and I would go back out and just do a little bit more. And that stuck with me. So today, you know, when I do go knock doors, I walk really fast. A lot of guys that are in my job, they're like, dude, if you're going to go train with Ashton, make sure you got your running shoes on because you'll have to run to catch up. Because it's just about, man, I'm just here to work hard. If I'm in the game, if I'm turning my brain on to work, if I can talk to 10 more people than you in a day because I walk faster than you, then dude, I'm going to talk to 10 more people in a day. And when I first started my first summer of doing summer sales, I literally ran door to door selling satellites. They would say no, and I would take off. I'd run through their yard so they wouldn't even have, I went through their yard so fast, they wouldn't have enough time to say, don't run through my yard. Like I was already gone, you know, like I was already at the next door. And a lot of that was from, you know, wrestling and just wanting to be the best and striving to be the best and knowing that there was somebody else out there that was better than me, or at least I told myself that, right? I ended up winning nationals. So maybe there wasn't anybody in junior college. So it wasn't, you know, Cale Sanderson.
Hey, you know what? That beats the only trophy I got was third place in a spelling bee in 5th grade. So
boom.
And you're not turning the lights off with that bad boy.
Turn your light off with that
right now.
Maybe if I threw it, I could reset the Nintendo.
There you go.
Hey, Ashton, you talk about discipline. You talk about the things that wrestling gave you. Can you name something in life that you've learned the hard way?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's most recent, I lost some money on a house flip. And I learned the hard way that you've got to be all over the contractor. You can't just let him sit and not do anything, or else you're going to lose a lot of money on that. I also learned the hard way, and I if you want me to dig deeper, I can think back to other things as a kid. The things that are coming to my mind, I started a business when I moved down to San Diego that initially on paper as a brand new entrepreneur, first business where I started with my brother. He'd already had a couple of businesses, but first business of my own was a carpet recycling business. And then the numbers on paper penciled out. But as I have, in hindsight, the numbers penciled out, but we were told wrong numbers. And that's unfortunate that I didn't do more due diligence with the people that were telling us the numbers to verify. Trust would verify. I just trusted that the numbers that they told us were the right numbers. So we got a massive warehouse, 10,000 square foot warehouse, and we were recycling carpet, and I lost my shorts on it. And luckily the landlord that we'd signed a multiple year agreement with let me out, so I didn't have to file bankruptcy. But I learned a lot of things from that lesson of, you know, losing a lot of money, not doing my due diligence enough, and then not thinking down the road, like, what's my exit at the end of this carpet recycling? Is there many people that are going to want to buy a carpet recycling business? Probably not. And so what was I building for, and how was I going to get there, and how was I going to pull myself out of the day-to-day grind? I know way more about carpet than I've ever wanted to know. And I've inhaled more dust from carpet than, I mean, I probably got piles in my lungs of this stuff. Talk about MRSA or something. I don't know. Something's in there from all this dust. But I learned from the school of hard knocks. I learned the hard way a couple of life lessons.
So as you stand here now, what are you afraid of?
So the thing I'm afraid of, more than anything, and this is something I just learned and uncovered with my coach, is I'm afraid of failure. And I don't know. And the funny thing is that's where you learn the most, is when you fail. You actually don't learn.
That's what they say.
That's what they say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you do learn good things when you win, when you're winning, but you learn the most when you're losing, when you fail. But that's what I'm scared to death. I'm scared to disappoint my wife, my kids. I'm scared to fail and disappoint my parents, or maybe it's disappointment, I guess, more than failure. That is what it is. Sorry.
But you know what, Ashton? I think we've had this discussion with a lot of different people, and we have asked that question many times. And I think a lot of people have said the same thing. I think Mike asked me that question when we first started this podcast. I think that was my answer, right? Like disappointing people and letting people down and feeling like maybe I didn't live up to the potential that I knew I had, right? Or, but can we switch gears for a second? I want to talk about, you mentioned your wife, Lydia, and can you talk about how you met Lydia a little bit?
Yeah, she's amazing, man. Lydia, she's a rock star. We met at BYU. She actually started going to devotional with when I transferred to BYU, my brother had just come home from his mission, the one that I have been roommates with for longer than I have my wife. He just came home from a mission. 3 days later, we're down at BYU, and in our apartment complex was my wife's best friends from growing up, and she wasn't living with them at the time. So my little brother, he started to go to devotional with all of them, and he started to go to devotional, and then they kind of stopped going. But my wife and my little brother were going to devotional together, and I met her in the Wilkinson Center one day at lunchtime, and the funny thing about our little story is I told my brother, I said, Blake, she's cute, man. You should take her out. So in college roommates, if somebody calls a girl, that they're off limits to everybody else, right? So I kind of claimed my wife from my brother, and she was off limits for everybody else. And then the next year, he hadn't taken her out. So I was like, hey, Blake, do you mind if I take Lydia? And he's like, I don't care, man. I never said I wanted to like date her or anything. You just said that I should. And so
yeah.
Anyway, so I met her there.
I love it. So I want to tell Mike, just for the record, I want to go on the record that Lydia is phenomenal and she belongs on this show for sure. But let me just tell you, there was a few, this had to be a couple years ago, Ashton. I was in a sacrament meeting and Lydia was playing the cello. Okay. In this sacrament meeting. She's an accomplished pianist and she is an amazing pianist, but she was playing the cello. And I'll be honest, it was a little rough. It was a little rough around the edges on her cello playing. And afterward, I went up to her after the sacrament and I said, Lydia, that was phenomenal. I can't believe that. Yeah, I just saw you play. I didn't know you played the cello. And she said, I really don't. I'm just learning. I've taken a few lessons and I volunteered to play in sacrament meeting too. So that's the kind of person that Lydia is. I was blown away by that. I was totally blown away by that.
Do the Buswells have no comfort zone? Like no comfort zone.
There's no off limits, right?
Like it's just like push.
We've got plenty of comfort zone. We're willing to get out of it.
Let me ask you, Ashton, about you and Lydia. How does that relationship? How has that benefited you, and how has she helped you be in the process of becoming who you want to become?
Yeah, so Lydia and I talk all the time. I mean, I was really, really excited to marry her. I married way out of my league, and
join the club.
Yeah, excited to do scripture study with her.
We should actually just name the show "Married Out of Our League."
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, so we I was excited to do scripture study with her because she was a spiritual giant, and a lot of really who I am is I'm trying to be like my wife. She's so incredibly disciplined and kind-hearted and thoughtful and caring, and will get out of her comfort zone just to help somebody else. That performance that you talked about, she had legit just started cello, like, I don't know, a few weeks earlier.
Yeah.
Probably.
Crazy.
And somebody said, hey, we need some more musical things. And she's like, I can do the piano, but we've heard lots of those. I just started the cello. If you want me to do that. And they're like, yeah, great. So she just jumps into that. But where she's really helped me, and where we've connected at an incredibly great level is we've taken the time. I don't know if you guys have read, I'm sure you've read, I'm sure on this podcast, you've talked about the 5 love languages. I don't work for them. This isn't an advertisement for them or anything like that. But we read that at the start of our marriage, and it was a game changer for me, because finding out that her love language was time was really important for me, because, and I would dare say that most women, their love language is time. And a lot of men are working their guts out and want to provide for their family, but what their wives really want is just some time. And so it's been a challenge for me. That's what I have the least of, is time. But I have to have an intentional life. And so it's been a challenge, and I try to give her time and fill her bucket in that way. And then when I give her that time and show her that love, Tyler, it is more, it's a magnifying glass on everything with me, right? We'll go into these, she thinks about stuff at a deeper level, church things, and we're not really into politics, but sometimes she'll bring up politics things. And her study undergrad was marriage and family human development. Mm-hmm. Her master's degree was family recreation, and she wants to get a PhD in family studies. And talk about pressure. Listen to this. Her master's thesis was on fathering. No pressure, right?
Hey, can you, Ashton, can you go ahead and step away from the mic and call Lydia over?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So anyway, she just thinks at things so, at an incredible level, and she's a great thinker and plans ahead, and opposite of me. I fly by the seat of my pants sometimes, and things get done, but more things get done because she's in my life, and she's thoughtful and intentional about things. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tyler, but she's the biggest blessing in my life.
No, it does for sure. And in fact, we were having this discussion last week with our guest about, sort of being the product of the people that we have in our lives. Right. And when we surround ourselves with people that push us and propel us to be better, right, then that's the trajectory we're going to take. And I think that, Lydia, I love talking to Lydia. She'll probably tell you that a few times I've caught her in the hall and talked her ear off for forever, but she's one of those people that I think is amazing, and that makes the Buswell family tick. You guys are great. So moving forward, what do you hope for? What gives you hope?
Yeah, what I hope for. I mean, I had a guy ask a few weeks ago. He said, "What would your ideal day be 5 years from now? What would it look like 5 years from now?" And so what I hope for, and what I kind of said, was pretty close to what I have right now, except my kids would be older, right? And I think that's what I hope for. Is I hope to be a good citizen to people. I hope to be a good person. If I had the desire of my heart, it would be to be the same as Alma's desire in Alma 29, to be an instrument in God's hands. Every time that I'm an answer to somebody's prayer, I just thank God, because it's the coolest feeling in the world. And that if I could be an answer to somebody's prayer every day, my bucket would be full. I could be the poorest person in the world, and it wouldn't matter one lick, because I was able to help God in some way and just be an instrument in His hands. So I hope to be that. I hope to be that for people. I want to live my life in such a way that becomes a reality, where I can really serve people and serve God in that way. And then it brings me hope. What brings me hope also is that we're all children of God. and God doesn't make mistakes, and God's perfect. And so, like I referred earlier, I don't think, and again, I don't care what religion you are or where you're from. I don't think there's very many people in this world that wake up saying, I want to screw somebody today. I just don't think that that's really out there very much. I think what's out there is people are waking up and they're trying to do the best they can for themselves and their family. And so and that brings me hope. Like, I'm doing my best, you're doing your best, man. Sometimes our best isn't good enough, or what we think isn't good enough. And that sucks. And sometimes you get fired from a job, or from being a friend, or from whatever, because the expectations aren't lined up. But if we can, or I can just realize that everybody's just trying to doing their best, man, then back to that grace and mercy thing, Mike, life is better when you live in that way. That you're not having people, not thinking the world's against you or anything like that. So
when Sydney came home from her mission, I asked her, what was one of the things that you learned that stood out to you? And she said, my mission president taught us to always assume positive intent. Right.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to what you're saying. People are good. Sometimes good doesn't cut it. Sometimes we're not as good as we could be, or we should have been, but if we, there's always tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
There's always
tomorrow. Being endured ourselves. You guys I've got some funny stories and some fun stories from that. And I just laugh. I have to laugh, right? Again, it's 40 opportunities to get better, or 40 opportunities that my life sucks. But I just laugh sometimes because and I've actually called people out on it, not very often, because I don't like confrontation, but I've actually called some people out on it before, where they've just come out and been belligerent and just rude to me. And I've said, you know what? If I were your son, you probably wouldn't treat me that way. I'm just doing the best I can. And I'm sure you're probably doing the best you can too. Right now is not a good time. I can come back later. Maybe I just won't come back. God bless, and kind of go on their way. And that it puts them in their place a little bit. Again, I've only done that a couple of times, but I have done that because I'm like, man, if you're trying your best, I know you're trying your best, and I caught you at a bad time. Something may have happened at work, or you may have had a family member die recently that I don't know about. And I may never know about, and that's okay. I don't need to know about it. And you're just doing your best, man, and assume that positive intent. I think that's a crucial thing.
I love that. I love that idea of just like trying to look at people for what they are, right? For what they really are. And you talk about, we're all children of God, right? If we looked at people that way, we had a guest on a few weeks ago that does a lot of work with homeless people, and he brought that up, that idea of just, I just have to look at them that this isn't where they wanted to be. This isn't what they had in mind. This isn't the journey that they would have picked out for themselves, but here they are. And what can I do to impact them and impact their trajectory? Yeah, I love it, man. So Ashton, this is, we've spent nearly 2 hours together. You believe it or not, time flies when you're having fun, right?
It flies when you're having fun.
But we end every show the same way. And the basis of the title of our show comes from the movie It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that movie over the years, but
yeah.
But at the end of that movie, through all of the turmoil and the troubles that George Bailey perceives he has in his life, he finds himself in a room with family and friends and people close to him that are begging for the opportunity to help him out. And it's at that point he realizes the richness of his life. What does it mean to you, Ashton, to be considered the richest man in town?
Well, I like George Bailey, don't consider the money as the riches. The relationships I have, and my wife gives me a hard time about it, but I have on my phone a feel good journal. If somebody sends me a nice text, or if somebody says something nice on whatever, I'll take a screenshot of it and I'll add it to my feel good journal. And it feels good to have relationships and depths of relationships and love. And it can be the love and the depths of relationships can come from a small handful of people. My wife has a handful of really, really best friends. And I consider like, and Tyler, you're one of my best friends, but 35 people, some of my best friends, you know, because I just love that. And my personality is that everybody's my friend, kind of like my dad and mom. And anyway, I love it. I love the richness and the depth of relationships, and I hope to be one of the richest men in town with the depths of relationships, and just trying to live my life in that way. But yeah, that's a great question. How does it feel? It feels great.
I love it, man. I mean, I think, Ashton, through the last couple hours that we spent talking to each other, I look at, I just think about your description of your parents, and how they were. And, I asked the question, how do you honor your parents? And you said, well, I want to live a good life and not disappoint them or let them down. And I just think of your description of them. And then I think of you, and that's exactly who you are. You are that guy that, when you walk into a room, everybody wants to know Ashton Buswell because of your personality and because you exude that energy, and you can tell when you say, hey, the richness to me is relationships. And I see that from you. I've seen that from you from the moment that I met you in the church building in the hallway, however many years ago that was. I don't even know, maybe a dozen.
And I think that all of that is a product of that intentional living,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you personified that sign that was in your dad's study. You read it and it meant something to you. You were able to see evidence of that happening in the lives of your parents, and you've gone on and replicated that, right? And I think it's interesting, like the comment that you made about faith and about church and religion and the benefits of all religion, right? The benefits of being a person of faith. I would agree too that the same holds for family. And I know that family is an interesting word and it looks different, but at its core, it is designed to do the things that it has done for you. It is designed to do the things that it has done for me, right? It sets us on a path. It gives us models. And, Tyler, you and I have talked about modeling. It gives us patterns of life. This life is complicated. We've talked about distraction. We've talked about noise. We need all the help that we can get, right? And how wonderful it would be to be in a position where we have family, where we can call up somebody and say, hey, I need some help, right? And for the record, we started talking about calling for help. For the record, Tyler Gould, the other night, I called you at 1:00 at night.
You did.
Asking for some help, right? I had a situation and it was like, hey, I need some help. And Tyler's not addicted to late night and he was not awake. And I went right to voicemail. So
got me on a good night, man.
Yeah, Ashton, man, I have loved it. And I've got notes for days here and I've got some homework. I got some things to work on, but truly I believe that in life there are no accidents. You said it. God is perfect and he doesn't make mistakes. And I know that the time that we had together tonight, that was supposed to happen, man, because you hit a couple of nerves and I've got some things. And I really do appreciate you swimming upstream, right? I really appreciate the intentionality and that peculiarity, because that's where you're getting that power, right? My boy, Russell Wilson, quarterback, Seahawks, MVP candidate. Anyways, he says, right? Separation through preparation. And as you do that work, you separate yourself from those around you. You live life differently. You're going to get different results. Whether it's door-to-door solar sales, whether it's dating your daughter rotating a daddy-daughter date every Tuesday, those things are yielding a very rich life, man. And I appreciate the sneak peek into it tonight.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I've really enjoyed it. enjoyed the good conversation. And hope
Yeah, well, we're gonna bring you back with your dad, with your wife, with your mom. We're bring everybody back. We're just gonna have a Buswell family reunion because we got more to learn.
That's right. Hey, Ashton, it was fun, man. We appreciate it, and we'll do it again soon, huh?
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, take care.
Okay. Thanks, fellas.
All right. Good night.
See ya.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.